Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to talk about dies in this episode 12 of Stamp School. Can you believe we're still stamp schooling? I figured we ought to talk about dies sooner or later because it's a purchase that many of you are making or want to make, or maybe you're kind of wondering if you're getting the most from your investment. So we're going to talk about the two main types of die cutting machines and what's better for what, and what you should invest in first depending on how you like to craft, and also what kind of dies are the best buy. So basically your die cutting machines are broken into two categories. You have your manual machines, which are used by putting a physical die through it, and like this is a die, you'd put it through and it would cut something and it would pop out the other end. So it's very very hands-on, very easy to use. And these types of machines typically will take thick dies like I just showed you here, which are good for cutting thick materials like cork, wood veneer, chipboard, mat board, felt, that sort of thing. But it can also take the thinner dies, which are less expensive, that are, you know, they come in basic shapes, they come in shapes to match stamps, they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. So a machine like this can take all these different types of products as well as embossing folders. But when you're getting into a mechanical, like an electronic machine, instead of cutting a physical die like the manual machine does, it actually cuts a computer file. So what I have here is an old Cricut Expression. I don't think they make this one anymore, and luckily when I got it there was the option of using software. I use SureCuts a lot too, and I can cut all my computer fonts and SVG files and things I design on this machine. Now the machines are different, and I believe you have to be connected to the internet anytime you want to use the newer Cricut. So I really wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't buy another Cricut. This one has served me very well, but and it was like the first one that came out, the first Expression that came out. But I wouldn't recommend that just because of how proprietary Cricut is currently, and I think if you're going to invest over $300 in a machine, that you should be buying something that you can use again and again without having to spend more money, and that you have a lot more flexibility. If you think of this like a printer, you send your image to it, whether it's over your computer or from a little image in a cartridge, you send it to the machine and it cuts it out. So just like with a printer, if you're stuck with buying only the printer ink that comes for that printer, you kind of have to pay whatever they say, but at least you can still print whatever you want. But with the machine that's proprietary, where you have to buy a certain file or you have to buy a certain cartridge, then they kind of own you, and you're not very flexible, and you're kind of stuck buying their products and not being able to experiment with other things. So I think that if I was going to buy another machine, I would buy the Brother Scan and Cut, just because you could stamp an image, put it through the machine, and it would scan it and cut it out for you, and that just seems very exciting. The only thing I don't like about that machine is you can't hook it to your computer. So the Silhouette's also a good machine, and also the Sizzix Eclipse is good, because the Eclipse, you can have cartridges, or you can use SureCuts a lot software. They have a version just for Eclipse, so you can cut all your computer fonts and SVG files too. Now, something you want to consider when you're looking at an electronic machine, not only is what it costs up front, but what it's going to cost down the road. So I actually use the Eclipse mats for my Cricut machine because they're the same size and they're a heck of a lot cheaper. I was buying 2 packs of these 12 by 12 Eclipse mats for less. I think I paid about $6. I think regular they're probably 2 for $10, but they worked great. And the blades were again like 2 for $10 or 2 for $6. So I did try the Eclipse blades in my Cricut. They didn't work that long. They were just a slightly bit too short, so they didn't work very well. So you have to kind of consider the cost of your blades, like the Eclipse blades, because I do recommend the Eclipse machine. We got one for our teachers down at the school, and I think it's very easy to use. It's very much like the Expression, but but you can also cut from your computer too, which I like. But their blades were inexpensive. They were like either 2 for $6 or 2 for $10, depending on when you got them on sale, and the mats were inexpensive, and that's something you want to look at. The Silhouette is an excellent machine. Their blades are more expensive. I reckon you can get a more detailed cut with a Silhouette machine, and it's about the same price as an Eclipse, but you know, instead of you know, your blades being 2 for $10, the blades are 15 a piece. So you just have to kind of keep that in mind, and I'm not sure how much your mats are, but you want to investigate all of those things when you're considering buying an electronic machine. So you also want to know yourself and how comfortable you are with computers, if you're going to buy a machine where you have to hook it to a computer to work it, or if it's something that will take a cartridge that you can just push a button and cut something, or if it's something like the scan and cut where you can just stamp an image, zip it in to scan, and it will cut it for you. That sounds fun. Honestly, that would be what I would buy if I was going to buy another machine, but I just can't really justify it with all the stuff that I have. But so there is a basic overview of the two types of machines. So you've got your electronic, which basically cuts an image on a file, whether it's in a cartridge or your computer, or you have the manual machine, which cuts a physical die. Now, if you want to emboss, some people have emailed me, said, all I want to do is emboss. Should I just get one of those little embossing machines? Well, you can. Embossing folders look like this. Basically, it's a piece of plastic, and you put your paper in there and you close it and you crank it through and you get a really textured, beautiful piece of paper. The only machines that will do this would be your manual machines. There are like embossing mats and things like that that you can put into the electronic machines, but they're not going to give you that really deep emboss that you get from an embossing folder. Now, you can take an embossing folder and take a piece of cardstock and mist it with water and use a heavy rolling pin to roll over it and get an embossed design, but it's still not going to be as deep and as crisp as you would get with your manual machine. So yes, there are embossing machines that are pretty much just like this, except having this, instead of having this thick slot there, it's just got a tiny little slot you crank it through, and they're cute and they look like a little purse, some of them, and I know there's different brands, but I would really recommend spending a little bit more and getting something that can do more, because otherwise if you decide you want dies and you want other things, you're going to be shelling off that money, and then you'll have two machines, and that's kind of ridiculous when you really only need one that will do both things. Like I said, I have the Big Shot. I like it. I will give you a tip if you are looking to buy one of these machines. A lot of times the big box stores will have coupons that are like 40, 50, 55, 60% off. Sometimes they restrict what you can use it on, but a lot of times you can use it on manual die cut machines. You have to, check that, call the store before you make a trip. But also, the big box stores have like die cutting stuff 40% off. I know Joann's does quite a bit, so you might want to, wait around for a deal like that. And then a lot of times crafters will destash and sell their older machines. There is an old red Sizzix machine I will warn you about, because that was the first die cut machine I ever used, and I vowed I would never use a die cut machine because it was awful. You had to pump down on this handle, and it was just so hard on your wrists. It took you forever to cut out a title, and I was just like, this is awful. Ironically, I never bought a die cut machine. Both of these machines were gifts from my mother for Christmas, and I was thinking, well, I was grateful. It was cool to have, but I'm thinking, well, now I just have to keep buying dies for this thing at 15, 20 bucks a pop. It's like this is just a money pit, and so I wasn't that excited about it. So then I discovered that I could buy dies that were very versatile. So some dies are a very specific shape that you're only going to use once or twice. Other dies are very basic and you can use over and over and over again. And now with the thin dies, you can actually amass quite a collection for not a lot of money. So my thick dies over there, you can see I don't have a ton of them, but the ones that I do have are basic shapes. They're alphabets. They're tags. This is a puzzle maker, so I can stamp a scene, and then I could cut it into a puzzle, and I could put it in an envelope and mail it off, and someone could put it together, and I could write a greeting on it, so they have to put the puzzle together to read the greeting. So I thought that was kind of fun, and it's a thick die, so I can cut it out of a chipboard or mat board or whatever. I have flowers, because I know I love to do flowers out of fabric and felt, and it's nice to be able to have that option. And tags and gears and things that I would use that I'd want to kind of make faux metal things out of. And then for thinner dies, you have so many more options. They're so much less expensive to produce that they're kind of easy to collect. They don't cost a ton, and a lot of companies are making them. Like these, I just got these Darice ones from a Consumer Crafts. They had them on sale for $6 a set, and so you can really stock up on those basic shapes from a company like Darice, who is not a sponsor. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, but it's a great way to build a stash. And the fact that they're nested means that you can cut your stamped layers and your matting layers and do a lot that way. Now, there are also a lot of stamp companies that have come out with stamps with dies to match, and some people love them. I would think that's why I kind of think I would like the Brother Scanlon cut, because then all my stamps that I have, and I have thousands, maybe tens of thousands or 20s of, I don't know, a lot. Then I would have a die to match all my stamps, so that's just such a tempting, because I'm like, well, geez, I'm all in, you know, look at all the stamps I have. I'm like saving money if I buy that machine, right? I'm saving money if I buy it. Tell my husband, won't you? But then there are also dies with stamps to match. So I want to show you, let's see, what's a good one? What's a good example here? Like, this is kind of cute. Something like this, though, I'd have to say, I could hand cut that pretty easily. So unless I was going to cut a ton of these, it probably wouldn't be the best idea to get the dies to match. However, if I was going to do a fundraiser for a local animal shelter and I was going to make 50 of these cards, having the dies would be really handy. Let me show you, I want to show you some examples of what I would think would be a good stamp set to buy with a die and what I would think maybe wouldn't be. So this is one I really like. This is, this die is obviously 3 leaves. You don't need to have the stamp for those to look like 3 leaves. They don't look like weird blobs, because some dies will just look like weird blobs unless you have the stamps to go with them. But then, and this is by Stampendous, and I think these sets, the die sets are about $20. And then, but then they also came out with 2 sets of stamps that would also fit within those borders. And I think each of these are like $12 each. And those come with masks and stencils, which is kind of cool. And Stampendous did send these to me for free, so I will disclaim that. But I thought these were really cool. Not only are the dies versatile on their own and useful, but having a couple different options for stamps is really cool. I think Stampin' Up! Does that too with some of their die sets. I'm not sure about other companies, but I think that's cool. If your die set can stand alone, if you don't need to have the stamp for it to make sense of what it is, I think then, you know, it's probably a worthwhile purchase. Now, this one is very specific. I've got a poinsettia flower, and then I've got the die that will cut out the different layers on the poinsettia flower, plus a little sentiment that's in this kit. Well, the sentiment is extremely useful. The die I could use with other sentiments. I wouldn't have to just use it with that. And but you know, honestly, I could cut that flower out pretty easily, except for the fact that this is a Christmas flower. This is a poinsettia, so I'm probably going to make 50 cards with this. So since I'm going to use it so much, then it's worthwhile for me to have the die. I don't want to buy a die for something I'm only going to cut out once or twice. I want to buy a die for something I'm going to cut out 50 times. So, you know, also keep that in mind. Something that's going to be perfect for me to have the die for might not be for you. Something that's perfect for you to have the die for might not be for me, because you may want to be doing tons and tons of the same design cut out. There's a beautiful stamp company called Our Daily Bread, and they have dies for almost all their stamp sets. But and I know one of my girlfriends does a lot of cards for women in her Bible study group, and so she would make tons and tons of cards. So yeah, she would use that die over and over and over again of a bird or a branch or whatever it is. But me, you know, if I bought that bird, I might, you know, stamp it a couple times and probably have it on the background. I probably wouldn't die cut it out. You know, so it's completely, you have to kind of look at that and say, how many times did I actually use that? How many times would I cut it out? So I would say if you're new, stick with basic shapes, basic labels, things that you know you can use over and over again in your cards and your scrapbook pages. If you think you're going to want to only cut things out of thin materials and you don't care about embossing, you may be better off with an electronic machine, because you can cut out an infinite amount of shapes. Once you buy the machine, you can do a lot without spending another penny. But if you think that would be, you're not going to be comfortable working on a computer or working on cartridges or dealing with an electronic machine, if you're just nervous about it, then you may be better off with a manual machine. I hope I made this whole die cutting thing easier to understand and not more difficult. If you have any questions, please leave them below. If you are a die cut expert, please check out the comments. Maybe you can help somebody, because I know a lot of you guys die cut a lot more than I do. You have a lot more machines and a lot more experience. If you're interested in an electronic machine, I would recommend the blogger Clever Someday. I believe it's cleversomeday.wordpress.com. She has reviews on so many different die cut machines, and she is totally clever. She has really great hacks on how to get more mileage out of your machines. And you know, if you have a friend that has a die cut machine, see if you can borrow it, see if you can use it, go over to their house and use it and see what you think before investing, because that's how you're really gonna know whether it's something you want to pursue or not. And you know what, my rule of thumb is, if I can cut it quicker with my scissors than I could forge around and find a die for it, then I'm just gonna cut it with scissors. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're buying. Really, I ask myself, I was like, well, I could cut that out, I don't need a die for it. Sometimes you just want it because it's available, but if you know you can just cut it without any problem, then you know, you may just want to skip the dyeing and use the scissors. So I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you can answer a question, please feel free to jump in and answer somebody's question. I love that. I love the community that you guys have built around each other, and helping other beginners enjoy this beautiful hobby of stamping. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Until next time, happy crafting.